自《封神》第一部上映以来，观众们便对影片背后的各种细节展现出了巨大的好奇和热情。本期幕后，我们邀请到了《封神》3部曲的视效总监道格拉斯·汉斯·史密斯，为我们揭秘影片视效的制作过程。
Oh, thank you for having me here today. I was the main visual effects supervisor for the production. I started without very much knowledge of Chinese mythology. So my introduction to the whole story was Wurishan describing the story actually over dinner. The way he described it, I enjoyed the story. I thought it was a very big story. So everything from those early days is knowledge that I had to gain, and I gained it very slowly. We went through the story. There's a lot of complicated things in there, and among the most complicated is making creatures, making the tens of thousands of people that were necessary to go into a lot of the shots. We start close on our main characters, and gradually the scene gets bigger and bigger until this whole construction is revealed. Just the scene with the blue screen. There are no elephants, there's no extra construction, there's only a line of the slaves here, and there'll be some over here. These constructions here had vehicles under them in order to move them. So everything had to be in sync with the speed of the elephants that did not exist. So we had to figure out what speed those elephants were. We also had to duplicate all of the slaves, and they have to duplicate them in a way that is consistent with the behavior throughout this entire construction. We took each of these actors who were being slaves, and we sent everybody through a photography session. They're surrounded by actually hundreds of still cameras. So they stand there, and they strike this pose so the camera can see every part of them. And then from that, we made CG characters. And you'll see the light changing. So they are taken through this process with sunlight and shadow that's naturalistic to see how the colors show up. So there are literally thousands of these characters that are being built, and some of them are just automatically changed just a little bit to make sure everybody is an individual.
How many actors just be under so many camera?
I think there were 200 or 300 of these slaves at one time for the live action portion. And out of those 200 or 300, we took about a dozen, built models around those and used those as the central figures to make other variations.
Huge amount of work.
So this is the model of the entire altar, showing it just in the really primitive form of how the construction is made with all the wood pieces, how it mounts the wall, what the interior part is and how it gets covered, all these log pieces, all this transition. How the slaves get to where they're going. They've all been given a path to go, and they've all have a job to do. This one's carrying a bundle of straw, and this is carrying a bundle of sand. So the dust and atmospheric perspective is all combined to make it look like we're very high up. It's a very dirty environment, and everything else is layers of haze and CG model construction going on.
How long did you finish this sacrifice theater scene?
I think this took probably 4 months for the longest shots. One of the things that takes a lot of time too is on these finished shots, almost anything can happen with CG. I personally spent a lot of time trying to look at every single one of these layers of people and slaves walking back and forth to make sure that there weren't slaves walking between each other or through each other. The other thing that happens is they start walking in air, and there's holes in the set where they're supposed to walk around, and some of them just walk over the hole. Because every time you find a problem, they've got to fix it. It can be almost starting from scratch sometimes. So it's a long process.
集群动画又叫群集动画，是指模拟大规模角色运动的动画技术，在影视作品中常用于制作人山人海的画面。除了祭天台之外，《封神》第一部中还有很多场景需要利用集群动画技术来完成。下面我们继续听视效总监道格拉斯先生揭秘纣王大军回朝歌城那场戏的制作过程。
This whole sequence is about the huge army and the huge city that we're about to go into. It's all the city people rushing to see the victorious group coming back in. Like everything else, these real things that they built, which are pretty monumental, were scanned, and models were built of that. So that's all part of the early planning process too. When they go to the second take, how do they get the oxen turned around? How do they get those drums back into the beginning place? Because the whole thing has to be organized. So, and there's a group of people that are responsible for positioning the blue screens in advance. They have to know where to put the blue screens. They have to know how far the oxen are going to go. So there's a huge amount of discussion that takes place. And before even these things get to that location, they have to know where it's going to be shot, where things are going to be positioned, and then as the day comes where they're going to shoot it. And the only part of the city wall that they built was this section here. And this was actually one of the larger sections. You can see how big the actors are, that this is quite tall and goes back pretty far distance. So the whole entrance area was actually a complete set. To look at this is the amount of extras that they had. One of the challenges with this group is how to have everybody run in and then slow down as if they are conscious of, like, we're entering the crowd and there's no longer any room to move. And yet they have to keep moving a little bit so they don't look like they've turned into statues.
What's the difference between this scene, the civilians, and the sacrifice altar's civilian?
On the sacrificial altar, it was designed around the performance. All of those people were bent over and working hard and were covered with dirt. It turns out that those are all noble people. So the wardrobe is completely different. Their behavior is completely different.
Could be more easier because in this scene, the civilian is so tiny,
Right.
and they just move slightly.
Right. Yeah, there's a decision to be made about each shot. The computer can't actually handle it either if we put too much detail in it. So there's decision points for everything. Where does the image fall apart, and how much what you would call hero detail do you need for a lot of these characters? So these people that are standing here, actually, they're all CG, but these are higher quality. These are lower quality. And these are just pixels that are...
听了道格拉斯先生的介绍，就是感受到刚刚两个片段如此宏大的场景，其实呢背后也需要我们的视觉主创团队耗费大量的心力，甚至是建筑物上的一根木头、一个台阶，都需要每一位小伙伴的用心制作、用心的去反复的检查。